Welcome to the Calling All Messengers podcast, where we help you clarify who you are and why you are as a Christ-centered messenger. Join us as we share key insights and processes that will encourage and empower you to reach your tribe. Now listen in with your host, certified life purpose coach and messenger midwife, Terikka and online business strategist and resident messenger, Lakesha Gates.
Welcome to another episode of the Calling All Messengers podcast. We have been chomping at the bit to get to this topic, but before we do that, I just want to say that I am Terikka, your co-host. Joining me today is always the great
Lakesha Gates, your resident messenger.
Keisha, I'm so glad to be with you in particular talking about this topic because we have been going through this since 2015, and it becomes more and more clear to me that this is a process or a question that cannot be skipped. Every time we try to get people just launched into, be a messenger, reach your tribe, and we don't do this or we let this part slide at all, it always comes back to haunt us. So today we're going to be talking about question number 4 from the 7 guiding questions every messenger must answer if they are to effectively reach their tribe. So today's question is about the messenger. What are your strengths, spiritual gifts, values, your personality, your attributes? What do you love? What do you like? As far as processes go, this is who you are showing up as you begin to reach your tribe. And so when we ask the question, why do we have to get clear about who we are as messengers? Why do we have to know the nuances of how God designed us just because we want to make a difference in other people's lives? God could have called anyone to carry this message, but he chose you, your strengths, your quirks and all. He is not asking you to be anyone other than who he's designed you to be. So it's important for you to know yourself so your tribe can experience the authentic you and how the Father reaches out to them through you. He already knew your style, your flavor, and he knew that this would be the combination that was needed for your tribe to receive the transformation that he has for you to bring to them. We're going to be talking today about how to embrace who he's made you to be, so that is precisely who you can show up as. So with that being said, Keisha, why do you feel like, before we talk about all the different components that we dive into in the messenger experience, what was so key for you to understand about yourself as you began to get clear about reaching your tribe?
I think you have to have an understanding. And I don't like using words like have to and should and all that, because I also believe that there's a recipe for success. Now, the amount of ingredients you put in that recipe is up to you. I might like my cakes a little bit sweeter. You might not. And so I don't like to say things like have to, but on this episode, I am. I think that you have to have an understanding about who you are when you're doing this work, because otherwise I think you morph. You get into a place where you people please, like, oh, this person wants this for me, and so I'll be that for them. Or this person wants this for me, so I'll be that for them. When you get clear about who you are, it does something like a magnet. When you put opposing magnets together, they attract. When you put positive to positive, they repel, or negative to negative, they repel. When you understand who you are, it puts you in a place where you attract the people who you're supposed to work with, and you repel. And I think we don't like to talk about this a lot. You repel the people who are not a good fit for you. But the difference is you're okay with it. You know that it's not because of anything that you did or did not do. It's just that it wasn't a good fit. And so that's why I think it's really important that as you're considering the work that you've been called to do, you have to get a deeper understanding about who you are and how you show up.
That is absolutely paramount, because the thing is, guys, I think sometimes, especially when we feel like, you know what, other people have similar messages to me, I need to be relevant or show up in the way that everybody expects me to show up. You're trying to maybe get on these large platforms or these large stages, and God has absolutely wired you to be more of a one-on-one person. You are very good at being in those sister circles or in those masterminds.
Intimate spaces,
exactly. And I'll never forget, even when Keisha first came into the messenger experience in 2015, a lot of her work was like, I'm going to do these workshops or these different things, and which was absolutely fine because Keisha is absolutely capable of doing workshops. But one thing she recognized that kept showing up in her values was her love for the experience, her love for travel. So we were just like, Keisha, where is that showing up in your messenger experience work? And so when she began to realize, I can have destination retreats, I can do these awesome sessions on a boat. Like, who thinks of that? Everybody's like, oh, do a webinar, do an online course. And there's nothing wrong with that. That may still fit in your wheelhouse, but how awesome is it that God would take the nuances and your likes and the things that you value and allow that to be key components of how you reach your tribe? Guess how energizing that's going to be when you can show up in your element. So one of the first things we talk about in the Messengers pre-work, this is built in what we do because we recognize that it is so important for you to be emancipated to literally show up who God has called you to be. So one of the first things that we tackle is personality work. And I know there's so many different options to do that. You have the Myers-Briggs, the True Colors. It's just so many different iterations of that, the otter, the beaver, the lion. But I'm saying there is something to that. And once again, we talk about your personality, it's beginning to understand how you're wired. There are some people who are absolutely like, what is the point? I want to get to the point. They're excellent leaders. They may not be the greatest at emotions, but guess what? When you get them on your team, it is going to get done. And then you have your melancholies, or those who are very much perfectionists. They really drill down into the details. They see how all these things work together. Then you have what we call your otters or your sanguines. And these are the ones who drip with personality. They're your speakers. They're your life of the party. So you begin to see all of these pieces are needed. So the world is just not a shade of gray. You have your phlegmatics, or what they call golden retrievers, that are just super laid back. They're your mediators, and they're the ones who kind of bring peace to every situation. So it is important to understand how God has wired you, and also to know your strengths and your weaknesses, not just so we can meditate on the weaknesses, but if I know that I'm not strong in a certain area, guess what? I need to bring someone alongside me who can be a strength in that area. So Keisha, what did you learn about your personality when you went through this process? Because I know sometimes you'll say things like Lord, like I do have compassion, right? So what did you learn about yourself, even being shepherdy, but also how God has wired you to show up for people in your tribe? What did you learn about how you do that based on your personality?
It's funny that I had to grow into who I am now. People don't believe this when I say it. I am shy. I always have been, but understanding, like almost like getting unlocked to really have a deeper understanding about who you are, cause you to show up in spaces a little different. And so when I got to the place where it's just like, okay, I am a choleric and I'm a melancholy. But also when I look at my APES test, I am a shepherd and I'm a teacher. And so it's these little nuances that if you don't begin to peel back the layers of the onion and start to go deeper and deeper and deeper, you will start questioning yourself. So it wasn't until I realized, yes, I am a force to be reckoned with. And not everybody can handle me. What I see is strategy. What I see is all you have to do is this next step. And that's something I think all of us have, no matter if you're a shepherd, a teacher, apostolic, or melancholy versus a phlegmatic, it doesn't matter. There's something that you say, all you have to do is this, right? But
That's
how
good.
you do it and how you show up is important for you to know. So when I saw that my strengths are belief and learner and self-assurance, those things resonated with me. Okay, yes, I'm starting to get a clearer picture about who I am and why people are always looking at me like, oh, you always seem to keep pressing forward. It's just because of how I'm wired. I saw this clip yesterday that kind of poked me a little bit. And it was talking about toxic positivity, that when people come to you and they have problems, if you're always saying to them, I'm so sorry that you're going through that, but consider this, consider the fact that you got up this morning, consider the fact that you're able to move your limbs and blah, 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 blah. And this woman spent that like if it was a negative thing to reframe the
Right.
situation. And it's interesting to have saw that last night and then have this conversation today, because that is not a negative thing. That is who you are. That's how you show up. And so when I realized I was a shepherd teacher, there's a little bit of shepherding. And so I do always ask this question, like, Jesus said we're supposed to be compassionate, but that's not how my compassion shows up. But my compassion shows up when I'm in a place to help you learn something. My compassion shows up when I am championing for your vision and for you. My compassion shows up when I'm able to help you move your vision forward. And so you have to know those little nuances about yourself, because if you don't, you'll start questioning your very existence. Because the world says that it's supposed to look like this. The world says that you're supposed to show up this way. But God created us all uniquely. That's why we have UVPs. That's why I can start a business and you can start the same business, but it's going to show up totally different because of how we are uniquely wired.
And they always say that you are the special sauce. That's really good, Keish. That is so important. We all have this general will of God, right? Where we're supposed to be loving and caring and compassionate and helping our fellow man and woman. And so I think a lot of times we will look at those things and say, like, man, I'm not out here at the soup kitchen or doing a toy drive for Christmas. But the thing is, if you don't recognize your post and how God has wired you, then yeah, you can be over here helping in the soup kitchen and you'll feel good in that moment. But where you were supposed to be is now being neglected because you felt like this is what a good Christian should be doing
That's
at this
right.
time. Versus if he's called you to be a teacher, then guess what? He's asking you to go ahead and get your curriculum together so that
That's
you
right.
can teach and transform in the ways that you are supposed to be transforming, so that you're not just feeding people fish, you're called to teach them how to fish. Now, some people are supposed to be feeding because right now they don't have the tools for that. But I want us to be so empowered and so free to say, and not to make excuses. God said, if somebody comes and are in need in the moment, it's not for us to say in that moment, go and be filled. But that doesn't mean that we start a whole business around that. It just means in that moment, we have the ability to help and we should do so. But it is important for us to understand how God has wired us. He's coming for what he's placed in us, not what he has not. So the next thing that we cover in this whole messengers pre-work, or the I am work is what we call it, is understanding your governing or your core values. This is where we're saying what matters most, so you can begin to realign your life to reflect what you value. And we just alluded to this at the top of the conversation where we talked about Keisha's values being family and travel showing up. So we were like, how does that show up in your work? Now, if you've ever been to one of Keisha's events, you'll see her kids at the sign-in table participating in the activities. So how do you find a way to incorporate your values into your message? So if you could just highlight one or two of your values that keep showing up over time and how that shows itself in the dynamic collective and what you do as you coach business owners. Because I want them to see this in real life, tangible examples, so that we're not just leaving it out here somewhere like, oh, we all have values, we should all clarify those. But how do they show up and get integrated in your work?
So, a couple of my core values are family, integrity. That is such a strong word for me, to the point where I've said this before, I will cut you off if you come against who I know myself to be. And I was listening to a podcast, and actually it was a KDE podcast, and they were talking about how we have to redefine legacy. And so your name is a legacy. It's not just financial. So integrity for me is like my legacy, that my name, when people hear my name, you probably won't ever hear anybody say, oh, you know, remember when she did this to this person, or remember when she did that to that person, because integrity is that important to me. It's the core of who I am. My family is very important because I want to be the one to change the narrative about my family and its generations. I don't want my kids to experience what I had to go through. And so I allow them to be a part of everything that I'm doing so that they can see they don't have to do exactly what mommy is doing. They don't have to do exactly what daddy is doing, but they will know that it takes work. They will know that it takes dedication. They will know that it takes commitment. Travel is also a part of my core values. And I understood that a lot more, because before I thought, oh, that's just frivolous, going on vacation, blah, blah, blah. But when you're dedicated to the work that you're doing, and because of who I'm called to be, because who my husband is called to be, we are constantly in a place of service. We're constantly showing up in spaces and giving of our knowledge, giving of our wisdom, giving of our time. And so travel becomes essential to our well-being. Otherwise, we keep pouring out, and we never get to a place where we get poured back into. So those travel, they also become like respite. They become these spaces of
Right.
refueling. And so, for example, I do these events. And like Terika said before, it's like, oh, I can do a workshop, or oh, I can do this. But that's never been my MO. I think about, when I'm planning these events, what somebody's going to think from the point of tapping on or seeing an invite, seeing an open invitation to, I'm having this workshop, I'm having this event. I think about them from that point all the way to the point that they leave and after. And I want them to know that they're loved. I want them to know that they're cared for. I want them to feel the passion behind, it's important for you to be doing this thing or learning this topic, because this is going to be the thing that helps you continue to confidently live into your purpose, to walk out your purpose, to contribute your life's work to the world. And so allowing my kids to be a part of that, or like you said, I had a cruise a few years back on a quote unquote yacht, but not the kind. So let me be clear, not the kind of yacht that I really wanted to have it on.
Got to begin somewhere.
It was nice, but I wanted people to be transported into a space that allowed them to take the weight of the world off and really fully engage and immerse themselves in the moment. And that's what I love to do. That's what I care about doing. So understanding that travel just isn't to another destination, which it will be. I will have retreats on a sunny beach in a Caribbean country. Let's be honest. That is
Mhm.
going to happen. But for now, I can have that same experience where I am.
So, Keisha, I want to thank you for sharing that, because one of the things that now, what would happen if Keisha didn't really drill down into that desire? I can honestly say I am a homebody. I'm an active reader. My mind is so active. I feel like I've been there, but in being in relationship with Keisha, there has absolutely been this sense of like, God loves me and he's in the details, because from the little notebook she gives and the pens, it is more than just, oh, it can just be anything. I think if anything, going through this whole quarantine and pandemic, we realized entertainment spaces, concerts, those things matter, because when those things were taken away, it was almost like life just felt like such a shade of gray in so many different instances. And so you realize you can serve people, at a workshop, you can give them the styrofoam plates and those little forks that don't really stab anything, and still the information be awesome. But because he has given you a desire to curate a whole experience, people can't help but to leave feeling like, man, if God is in these details and there's the more to be experienced, what else am I not experiencing? So I want to encourage everybody in this space, because for me, like what events are for Keisha and experiences are for Keisha, that's what binders are to me. So for those of you guys who will get to know me, you will hear this term binder. It's a running joke. But when I talk about binders, for me, that is the consolidated place where all of your mission and vision and I am pieces go in one place. And so for me, it just, I am on one. Like my value is absolutely clarity. And I tell people all the time, because I really do believe that to the degree that we're clear, that is the degree that we're able to move or not move. So that defines my obsession with reading and gathering resources and listening to certain things, because I'm like, if they just knew this, they could move forward in what God has called them to move forward into. Because there's so many times where we just have these examples of what others are doing, but it leaves us sometimes empty to know how does that translate for us, because that's not how we show up. And so, for example, Keisha is so a heart for the experience. She will record classes and re-record them and find the most bomb graphics and create those, because she wants you to experience that at every step of the journey. But if you're trying to be Keisha and you get yourself caught up in Canva and hurt yourself, you will never launch and do what God has called you to do. That is not necessarily where he's called your point of emphasis to be. Now, let's get this clear. Whatever you're able to do, we want you to do that. He's calling you to do that in excellence.
That's right.
But what is your secret sauce? What is your metaphorical superpower? So it's important to do that. It now allows us to celebrate someone else and to go and experience their area of expertise or their specialty without that casting a shadow on who we are or who we're not.
Isn't that what the kingdom is all about?
Exactly. So he needed Daniel to be learned and excellent in the palace, but that wasn't the same thing that was required of Ezekiel when he's running around the countryside having to appear as a madman because he's trying to get God's word across. So we want there to be freedom in understanding who you are and what you value. So one of the things we talk about understanding your values, because if you don't itemize what you value, everybody and everything in life will continue to pull on you and have you just going to and fro. But when you understand what matters most to you, when you're presented with options, you can know what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to, because you can't say yes to it all. And so I really want you guys to really get clear about what you value, and don't just do the whole cliche thing where it's just like, I value God, family. And once again, this is what God has shared with me. And it can be controversial if you let it. But people always say, I put God first. One thing that God has shown me is that we can't put him first in a list of everything else, because he's not comparable to anything else on that list. Right. God is preeminent, and he will tell you what to put first on any given day. So you may be like, well, Lord, I'm trying to be faithful. I really need to get all these classes together because I want to reach my tribe. And he's saying, have you not seen your 10-year-old asking for your attention and needing you in this moment? So today, put that aside, and I want you to go on a play date with your babies. So that's the freedom in saying God is preeminent and I'm sensitive to him, and he knows my heart, that I want to serve him, that I want to serve my family, that I want to serve my community. But once again, there's so much need everywhere that we have to get with him to say, all right, Lord, what's needed in this moment? And there's sometimes where he's like, oh, I'm finna play with the kids all summer. And he's like, nope, that's not what this is. Put them in a YMCA group and let them go swim with the other kids. And I need you to get this ready. So I just want us to be really freed up and understanding. So far we've covered personality and we have covered values. And I know Keisha already shared a little bit about the spiritual gifts piece, because she talked about being a shepherd and being a teacher. So we're going to talk about that. We know as believers that there's been so many spiritual gifts tests. We know my spiritual gifts. My spiritual gifts are, say, teaching, word of discernment, word of knowledge, but we don't take it to the next or to the nth degree. So now that we know what our spiritual gifts are, we know the what. Now we can ask the question, how do they show up? This is what we call your personal personal style. So if I didn't understand this, I would be like, Lord, am I even gifted? Because I am something that's called very task structured, very task structured. There's some people who are people structured, people unstructured. So let's break that down just a little bit. So when I say task structure, that means that I can read, I can put together as a teacher, I can work on websites, and I can be all about that because it is very task oriented. Now, my EQ, my emotional quotient, or my people skills will need help. Just because I'm task structured, that does not mean that I don't care about people. But what it does mean is when it's time to get something done, you probably want Terikka on your team. Now, if you need someone really mended and really counseled up a whole lot, you may want to send a tag team member with Terikka. So that's just what that looks like. Keisha, what was your personal style? I think you had a little bit more flexibility in how you show up and how your spiritual gifts show up.
I am structured, but I'm people or task structured. And listen, Terikka, when she takes these tests, she is very one thing. And that is how she showed up. When I take these tests, I kid you not, I'm always like, I want to be one thing. I want to be one thing. And they'll be like, boom, you're in the middle. You're a little bit of everything. How is that possible? But as I've learned over the years, it's about who you are and who you are called to serve. And so people who are going to come to Terikka need to have her be this definitive. They need her to show up and be sure and confident in her space, because he's also called her to focus and hone in on this one message, because this message that she carries is heavy. If you want to know who you are and why you are, you go to Terikka. Not everybody can carry that message. And she's done it so gracefully for the last 20 years. Now, when it comes to me, I'm going to show up in different spaces. I'm going to show up in different environments. And so I have to have a little bit more flexibility in how I show up. And that's important for me to know, because I can't go from this environment to this environment and show up in the same way. And that's not to say that I'm switching or changing up. It's just that I have to be aware of the different types of people that I'm going to interact and how I show up for them.
Absolutely. And God made you a shepherd. So what would it look like for someone to be a shepherd and not have people smarts? That is key. And so let me just share this. I don't ever really show up as shepherdy, but once someone comes into the messenger fold, there is this desire that I have for them, but it's typically a desire for them to have the encouragement that they need, the resources that they need to reach their tribe. So it's my lane is what it is. I don't go wide, but I absolutely go deep within my lane. So if you say task structure, that does not mean that you don't care about people, but it's how you care about them is usually something that you are providing by way of your task structure gift. So if you guys are listening to all of this and you really are saying, you know what, I really just need to do this I am work, it is available on the website for free, and it's going to remain free in the self-study portion of it. So that's the messengerexperience.com. I don't want to hold this information hostage. God wants you to be clear about who you are and why you are, because there is a tribe that is waiting for you. So I know typically we were talking earlier about not sharing certain things on podcasts because things change. But one of the things that I am convicted of is that for anybody who wants to come and get clear on those pieces, that is being made available. So start your clarifying journey, because whether you ever are a part of the messenger experience or not, you are going to need to be clear about who you are. People come to you for who you are and what you hold, not what you don't. So begin asking yourself, what do people come to me for? And so these are just some tools and resources that's going to help you get clear so you can know why God has you showing up in certain spaces and what you have to give once you show up in those spaces. So for spiritual gifts, we covered two. The what, that's what your spiritual gifts are. The second is your personal style, is how your spiritual gifts show up. And thirdly, your ministry passion area. This is where your gifts most show up and they best show up. It's always funny to me when people are like, I have the gift of hospitality, but you have them at an event and you're like, I don't really see that. But what they're not really clear about is, yes, I have the gift of hospitality. It shows up in a very task structured way. Then it shows up when I'm serving teenage moms who are in the foster care system. So once you get in that space, because that's your ministry passion area, oh my gosh, every hospitality gift that you have really begins to show up, because that is the area where your passion comes alive. So for me, I can do identity and destiny stuff all day long, but when I see someone is trending towards being a messenger, oh my, you'll be amazed at the amount of resources that will begin to flitter your way. So I just want to encourage you guys, when you're looking at your ministry passion, you're saying what cause or what people group or what thing do you look at that either brings you joy or that angers you and you feel like change needs to come to this area. I want to encourage you, really look at what is your passion area, because that is where those gifts are really going to show up. So those are the trifold areas of the spiritual gift gifts. So we want you to go beyond just identifying what the gifts are. We want you to look at how they show up by way of your personal style and where they show up. So hopefully you begin to now see some of these pieces begin to take shape. And one of the things that we did not necessarily include in the messages pre-work, but I still believe that everybody needs to go and figure out is, what is your love languages? I recently read a book on God Speaks Our Love Languages. It took it to another level, because before it was always love languages and you really saw it by way of couples, or you saw it even more research as of late, love languages as it relates to your children. But when I looked at the one about God speaking our love language, that was tremendous, because words of affirmation is absolutely my top love language. And I'm like, that's true. God will speak to me through words, through the taught words, through books. So when you begin to recognize what your love language is, what is life-giving to you, you can put yourself in situations and places where you know how your love tank is filled. Because if you're going to be going out trying to reach your tribe and doing all of this kingdom work and life work and family work, you're going to need to be refilled and identify what that looks like. And that's something that you Google, the 5 love language test. That is a free test as well, and it will give you your results. I want us to be clear, y'all, because you can try to make it like, well, I really don't want to have to need anything. I just want to be a soldier for the Lord. But why did he wire you that way then? Why is it when you get those acts of service, or you get those physical touches, or you get those
Quality time,
and you don't get that and you're not well? It's not meant for us to identify just for it to be ignored. Keisha, do you have anything that you want to sound off on the love language piece? That wasn't even in my notes, but I wanted to put that on you guys' radar because it is a thing.
and you have to pay attention to your love language and understand that usually you give love the way that you want to receive it. And you have to understand that whoever you're in that relationship with, be it your spouse, be it your children, your parents, you can't get offended if they don't receive love in the same way that you're trying to give it, because they have their own love language. So mine is quality time, but my husband's is acts of service and gifts. He's going to appreciate me doing something for him or showing up for him, like helping out with his annual fundraiser that he does. That is him. That's how he receives love, and he's going to appreciate it more. Whereas I am like, no, I just want to stand by you and watch a show. And so you have to understand that just because you want to give somebody something in that way doesn't necessarily mean that's the same way that they want to receive it.
That's good. That was just a little bonus piece of the I am work. And so this next part that we talk about is clarifying your mission and vision. I'm always torn when I call that I am work, because I do recognize once we switch the lens to talk about mission and vision, we're now moving into the why you are piece. When we start talking about your mission and vision, your mission is the work that you feel called to do. And that's going to be aligned with your ministry passions. You should begin to see how all of these things are interweaving together. But I do want to make a distinction, because there's this personal mission, which is what you want to be about, what you want your life to be about. But then there's also this mission, which we are calling your work or your kingdom assignment. So this is the work that you are feeling called to do. And your vision is what you want to see as a result of doing the work. So when I talk about my mission, it is absolutely in this whole space of helping us identify and clarify and refine our God-given message. And my vision then is to see an army of messengers equipped with the tools and resources they need to reach their tribe. So mission, you're going to have a lot of verbs in there, because this is the work that you're going to be doing. When we talk about your vision, it's what you want to see as a result of living into your mission. Keisha, did you pull your mission and vision out?
Well, at the end of the day, my mission is simple and my vision is simple. Ultimately, I want to see people contribute their life's work to the world. And how I do that is I'm going to provide you some tool. I'm going to help you develop some habit and the right attitude to be able to accomplish that. So whether that's a course, whether that's a workshop, whether that's a book, whatever I need to do to help you get there, that's what I'm going to do. That's what my mission is. That's how I show up. And so I don't want people to overcomplicate it. Like, I need to have this streamlined mission and vision, and I need to be able to rattle it off word for word, verbatim. It is who you are. Don't overcomplicate it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. You know what it is that you want people to do. Just say that. Show up and do that. The thing that you're doing is usually your mission. What you're working towards is usually your vision.
That is so good and so succinct. That's rich. Thank you for simplifying. I always say, at my heart of hearts, I am a clarifier. So as much as there's like these identity and these purpose pieces, my whole thing is whatever God is asking you to do or be in whatever season, if there's a resource that I can give you to help you get clear in that thing so that you can move forward, there it is. So for those of us who are still not just fully clear, one of the things I know that whatever God is calling us to do, somewhere in there, he is calling us to reach people, to reconcile his kids back to himself.
That's right.
Now he has as many different ways of doing that as there are people.
Yeah.
There may be some people who are in the beauty industry, and as people are sitting in your chair and you're helping to restore their whole physical landscape, they are having a chance to connect with God, desiring to meet them in the details of who they need to feel like their best selves.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because we forget that our ultimate mission is to go therefore and make disciples. Our ultimate vision is to be reconciled back to God so we could establish the relationship He wanted and desired from the beginning. How does your mission and vision fit into that? And that's the difference between a messenger and somebody else just pursuing a vision or a mission. You understand that there is someone you're doing this for.
That is it. I get really passionate about all of it, but this part has been so key for me, because I think just coming up in just different ministries and different things like that, people are definitely always trying to find out who they were in the context of the four walls, because that was something you knew. You didn't want to forsake the gathering, so you were going to be in this body of believers on a Wednesday night Bible study, on a Sunday, on a Tuesday prayer night, on a Saturday evangelistic walk.
Right.
So you knew that you were going to be so entrenched in this environment. So if it wasn't clear that where your gift showed up in this place, it was almost like you were a little bit lost, because you didn't have this. What they don't tell you is that only like 10% of the people are going to be in that full-time pulpit ministry in that way. We definitely had to recognize that God was calling these spiritual gifts and these prophets, teachers, evangelists to be in all of these other spheres. So we have to find out who God is calling us to be in the marketplace, so to speak, in these other spheres of influences that God has called us to be in. And that's why we have to get clear, because if not, we're going to feel like, and even if you do have something that's readily available in the church where it's like, okay, I know I'm supposed to lead the new members class. Well, does that mean that God doesn't necessarily have you teaching some other things on other topics, the other 6 days of the week that you're not in church? We don't want to limit that.
And what's coming to me is we are supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. We have to understand that whether you're at church, whether you're at the grocery store, whether you're at work, whether you're at the park with your kids, whether you're at a concert, whether you're wherever, this is still who you are. And you have to understand, Jesus didn't go to church. He went to the temple. He didn't go to church. There was no such thing. There was no such thing as the church as we know it today. And so who are you when you're going into the world? This is what's going to separate you. This is the sauce that's going to be like, wow, she shows up different. Oh, he does this differently. I wonder why. This is going to be the thing. Getting this understanding is going to be the thing that makes you set apart, that makes you identifiable as a believer, a follower of the way.
You may have like a hobby where it's like, oh my gosh, I just can't believe I just love crocheting. And you're like, but how is that even advancing the kingdom? But you have a passion for crocheting. But God also has given you a teaching gift. So somehow you bring people together who also love crocheting. You guys come together around this activity. Conversation is being had. Life is going back and forth. That's the beauty of the Father to me, is that He is so diverse. He's not just saying everything is just a straight up Bible study, or everything is just so vanilla. It's almost like there's something that we do with the kids and adults too, as far as I'm concerned, that we call understanding your power traits. And we have this part where we talk about how are you smart, because the question is never if you're smart, but it's how are you smart. And we have people who are logic smart, nature smart, music smart, humor smart, all these different things. And it's almost like God is saying, and it's probably even more than that, but He's like, I ain't gonna blow your mind. So we're gonna give you these little tidy frameworks and buckets so you can begin to understand. But it's like, you look at someone who's humor smart, their ability to bring laughter. And even in His word, He talks about laughter as medicine to the soul. So that kid who's now the class clown, like, let's find a way to shape that and frame that, because that is something absolutely that God wants to unleash, because God is not this stoic, can't crack a smile. God has a sense of humor. Look at the hippopotamus. Look at some of the things He created. God absolutely has a sense of humor. And so when you can embrace every aspect of yourself and not boo-foo that, I'll never forget when someone prophesied over me once. It was just some altar call for anybody who felt like they had a call to the prophetic. And I felt a call to the prophetic, but everybody's like being called to the nations and called to this and called to that. And when the man of God got to me, he said prophetic humor. I'm not even gonna lie, that hurt my feelings. I was like, even God thinks I'm a joke. What is prophetic humor? Where is that in the scriptures? But one of the things that someone said to me afterward that was so encouraging, she said, Terikka, people who have humor, those are people who have typically gone through the most pain, and they've learned how to take that pain and find humor in it, because now it begins to shift people. Tyler Perry, love him or dislike him, it doesn't matter. But people saw their trauma in those initial plays, and they were able to laugh, but still see what they were facing. Because humor, it's like when people add something sweet to the medicine so you can take it. I had to learn to appreciate that God is sometimes giving me a quick wit or humor so that I can say the challenging things and still administer the truth. So I want you guys to embrace every quirk, every nuance of who God has designed you to be, because that weird sense of humor that you have, that's going to be the very thing that your tribe member is drawn to, because they may be like, everybody else seems so serious or so this or so that, and then they encounter you and it's almost like their guard can be let down because they feel like, you know what, I can relate with this person.
But that's not everybody's thing. So you have to find what your thing is. You really do. Like, I love to dance. And with the advent of some of these apps, I'm able to show my community, show my tribe. There's other aspects to me. I'm not serious all the time. And for people who know me intimately, they know that. They know that I'm goofy and I love a good joke and I love to laugh and I have a sense of humor, sometimes not the best sense of humor, but at the end of the day, this is what makes you you, and this is what's going to attract your tribe to you. Because ultimately, that's what we're talking about here, right? Identifying yourself as a messenger. Because when you know that you're a messenger, you begin to understand there is a tribe waiting for you.
Keisha, I couldn't have said it better myself. And so I just want to encourage you guys to start the process of clarifying who you are. I'm going to encourage you guys again to go ahead and visit themessengerexperience.com. When you go down on the site, it's going to talk about the messenger process, and you're going to be looking for the pre-work section. I promise you, I will not stalk you. This podcast is not about necessarily trying to recruit. Don't get me wrong. I believe if you are a messenger, we absolutely have something that God has designed for you, but I believe that everybody needs to go through their version of the I am work. And these are just some clarifying pieces that we've identified. That doesn't mean that that is where the journey ends. I'm learning that it is continual. No matter how many times I go through this process, the older I get, the more parts of myself begin to open up and unfold. So this is a lifelong journey. Even though there's going to be some baseline things, I don't believe that Keisha's value of integrity is going to change. I believe that there's some foundational pieces, but we have to at least have the foundation so that we can continue to build on that clarity. I really do hope you guys enjoyed this process today. I really do hope that you will really take seriously the call to clarify who you are, because therein lies your freedom to really show up as the person, as the messenger that God has called you to be. Because make no mistakes about it, when he talks in the word about giving the 5 talents, the 2 talents, and the 1 talent, there is going to come a time where he's going to ask us, what did you do with what I gave you?
That's right.
And the beautiful thing is, he's only requiring of us what he's seeded into us, how he's designed us to be. So to me, it is so important to become a student of you, because how then can you truly bring the transformation to your tribe that you're desiring to bring if you're operating from a shadow self or a pseudo self or an uninformed self? So that clarity, guys, we are called to it. I believe that is absolutely a mandate. And that's why Keisha was saying she doesn't use the word have to a lot, but the reason it comes up in this conversation is because there is a mandate, whether we are receiving it or not. So I encourage you, start the journey, get clear. If you need help getting clear, we are absolutely here for you in this process. Keisha, do you have any closing remarks before we leave? Admonitions?
I want to encourage you, because that's how I'm wired. Take action and don't sit back and say, I'm afraid. Don't let fear get in the way. All we're asking you to do is take the first step, and then God will reveal the next. And then he'll say, take that step, and then take that step. You eventually start taking 3 steps at a time, but that's not what this is. If you really feel a prompting or an unctioning, as we say in Christendom, if you feel an unctioning, because you notice you never hear that word anywhere else. If you feel an unctioning, respond, take action, do something with that. And Terikka has already invited you to just start the process of your clarifying journey. That's it. That doesn't take anything but you saying yes and you going on a website and you getting access to some free information. That's it. So take action. Say yes.
There it is. All right. Thank you for your time today and for going on this journey with us. Without any further ado, Messenger, your tribe is waiting. Until next time.